Is family conflict preventing you from transitioning your business to the next generation? Solutions ahead. Hi, I'm Norman A. Hood, financial advisor and host of the Exit Plan Show. I interview America's top advisors like Bill Circle to help business owners enjoy more freedom, grow their companies faster, and retire someday on their own terms. Welcome back, Bill.
Thank you, Norm.
Bill's from Sinago in Macomb, Illinois. He has a master's degree in clinical psychology from Western Illinois University. He's a licensed clinical counselor and an executive coach, and he's a family business consultant in the exit planning process. Today we're going to talk about conflict resolution. We're going to discuss some of the sources of conflict. Once we have conflict, we have to resolve it. So how do we start, get the process started, and then once it's started, what are the steps we follow? So first of all, what are some of the sources of family conflict in a business?
Okay. I'm a big believer in expectations. We all have expectations of ourselves, and we all have expectations of other people. And when those expectations are not met, we become very disappointed. And that's a major source of conflict, is that disappointment and the unmet expectations. Some others are ones what we call a mirror effect. I see something in you that I dislike about myself. And because I don't like it about myself, I have no patience, no tolerance for that in you. And that can be a major source of conflict between people. Poor communication is a big one. A lot of people communicate based on assumptions, and that's a major source because they react on something that's maybe not real. It's just their assumption of what it is. A couple other big ones are diverging goals and control battles, who's in charge. So those, I think, are the biggest sources of conflict.
Okay. So we have all these different types of conflict, and a business owner knows when something's wrong. I mean, it's obvious when this is wrong. Sometimes they overreact. I know I've been known to overreact in conflict situations. I'm sure that's not the best way to start resolving.
Not good at all.
So what is the best way to start on trying to resolve conflict?
Okay. It starts with your attitude. And the number one attitude that everyone has to have is they have to want to resolve the conflict. Because if either one of them does not, then it's not going to happen. It's just going to go up and hit a brick wall. You need to have an attitude of respect. You need to be able to forgive. That's really important because when there's conflict, someone's been hurt. And you have to be able to forgive the person that hurt you. And you have to be able to compromise. Sometimes conflicts need some give and take in order to resolve them. And throughout all that, it's essential that you have good, direct, open communication.
Okay.
The actual process of how you do it. The first thing you have to do is you have to establish some parameters around how is that conflict going to be resolved. The biggest one is who is going to be involved. I like to think of three different groups of people. There are people who are part of the problem. There are people who are part of the solution, and those may be different people. And then there's everyone else. So if they're not part of the problem or they're not part of the solution, then they don't need to be involved. And they don't need to have any communication about it either. Which is a lot of times people go out and list other people to side with them, or here's my point and here's this, and it just really muddles the water when you do that.
Like going on Facebook and telling.
Yep. A lot of people do that.
Okay.
Once you establish how you're going to resolve it, the who, what, where, and when, then you have to be able to define what is the problem, what is the conflict. I worked with a family not long ago where he thought it was a financial issue. She thought it was a communication issue. And that went back and forth all because they weren't trying to resolve the same conflict. And you have to be able to define what is the problem here, what needs to be resolved.
So you think that sometimes people get they're so caught up in the conflict, they lose track of everything else. They don't even remember how they got there, or what's...
That happens quite often. The initial, let's say it's an unmet expectation. That starts this, and then it kind of feeds itself, and before long, the initial one it's totally forgotten, and all these other hurts take over, and those become the conflict. One of the ways I also think about is putting out brush fires. They come in there and put out this little conflict today, the brush fire, but the real source underneath all of that is never addressed.
Okay, so that could be a... this might not be a short process even.
Generally, they're not, if you're really going to resolve them.
Is there any kind of tools and techniques that you can use with families where there is a lot of conflict? How would you sit down with a family that was really in conflict?
Again, setting the parameters for them. This is who we're going to communicate with. This is how we're going to communicate. This is when we're going to communicate. Define what it is. Establish each person's perspective. There's three forms of communication in this process. One is a debate, one is an argument, and one is a conversation or a discussion. An argument is two people coming together to express their point of view. End of story. A debate has another element. Two people come together, express their point of view, then one of them has to be right and one of them has to be wrong. There's a win-lose situation. A discussion, two people coming together to understand the other's point of view. So if you're in an argument or a debate, it's not going to resolve it. So you have to be able to be willing to listen and understand where the other person's coming from. When you understand where everyone's coming from, then you find a common ground. Right? This is our starting point. We can all agree on this. In business, most people want the business to continue successfully. And so that's the starting point. It's not always the case. Some people want the business to end and they want out of it.
Right.
So you have to find out exactly what is that starting point.
Okay.
Then you find what's the destination. Where are you going? So what does resolution look like to you? You've had these conflicts that you overreact to. What would it look like to you if that were resolved? And you get all those on the table. Then you start finding win-win situation scenarios. How do we meet all these? Where does compromise need to happen?
Okay, good. All right. Hey, that's a great job. And as usual, can you just wrap this up again and tell us about the source of conflict, how you get started resolving them, and then the steps you follow once you get started?
Okay. Again, I think the biggest source of conflict is unmet expectations. They're not communicated clearly, and so they aren't met, and that creates conflict. In order to resolve a conflict, you have to go in with the right attitude. You have to want to resolve it and respect each other. To resolve it, you establish the parameters of how you're going to do it, find the common ground, and then find ways of everybody meeting their destination.
Okay, really good. Okay, if you're a family business owner and have conflict, you can talk to Bill. His information is in the show notes. And you can contact him by phone, you can email him, you can visit his website. If you have any comments about today's interview, you can leave those below. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.